Hello Varlets, looks like we have an unexpected bunch of patch notes that have just appeared. Catfish, our community manager, has shared a huge 3-page long provisional patch notes that outlines what we can expect to see come patch 14. Patch 14 will mainly consist of much needed balance changes and bug fixes arising from patch 13. What you are about to hear from me and from these notes are provisional, in that they are not final. Let me repeat. The notes here are not final and things can still change when patch 14 finally drops. With that out of the way, let's take a look at some of what I believe are the highlights to point out. First off, there are many buffs going on, from weapons to blessings to class talents that really improve either their performance or tunes them in some way which makes them a lot nicer to use. Starting off with the class talent updates, Psykers are expecting to see some really good improvements to their kit. Brain Rupture is seeing a string of buffs such as increased damage and armor multipliers, as well as a reduction to the movement speed penalty and the cost of charging up the right click. Assail is getting hit with some much needed balancing. They are moving the power of the ability into its secondary aimed attack rather than the spamminess of the primary. The primary attack will see a 20% reduction in damage and the secondary attack will see a 36% damage buff, which is further improved by empowered psionics. Smite is getting its infinite cast fix. No more unlimited power, but in return, they are buffing the damage it receives from empowered psionics from 50% to 125%, which more than doubles its base damage before other damage multipliers from the talent tree. The starting combat ability of Psykinetic's Wrath is getting a base 10% Peril Quell added to it, so Psykers that don't have Venting Shriek unlocked can still use the ability as a Panic Quell button. Talcine Shield and Dome are getting some pretty substantial buffs. They are improving how fast you can place the shield down, as well as increasing its duration, health, and the minimum duration the shield can last. They've also fixed the infinite dome bug with Warp Siphon. Moving on to Zealots, Blades of Faith are getting a very sizable buff. They now have a little bit of cleave, allowing it to pierce through one small enemy, as well as getting a damage buff to reach some weak spot breakpoints and a flak armor modifier buff as well. Shroudfield, the Zealot's invisibility, is seeing its Perfectionist Augment node receive some nerfs, reducing the backstab damage from 100% to 50%, but also reducing the cooldown penalty from 100% to 50%. In addition, the finesse damage bonus is now additive instead of multiplicative, meaning it won't do nearly as much damage as it does now. These changes are to prevent those one-shot Thunderhammer builds from getting out of hand, I assume. Importantly, Demon Host can now see you through your invis. This was to make it so players can't grief by aggroing a Demon Host, then going invis to escape, leaving the Demon Host to kill everyone else. Same applies to the Vet's Infiltrate ability. Chorus of Spiritual Fortitude is seeing some balancing. Unfortunately, it can no longer constantly stagger monsters. It will now only stagger on the first and the last pulse of the ability. Now, for Veterans. The patch notes goes on to say that they are working on an update to the Veterans talent tree to include keystone nodes which will be coming in a future patch. However, they hope that the following changes will keep our abilities interesting enough till that update comes. First, they are reducing the stamina regeneration delay of vets, allowing them to regenerate stamina quicker. This was always one of the key weaknesses of playing a veteran. The smoke grenade has received some buffs. They have added a small stagger to the detonation of the smoke grenade and increased its base duration from 10 seconds to 15 seconds. Taking the Grenade Tinkerer talent increases this to 30 seconds. Executioner Stance or Volley Fire has been restored to how it worked before, where its cooldown could tick while the ability was active, allowing you to potentially get your cooldown back while still having the buff. The most important change to this combat ability is that the counterfire node now highlights Scab Stalkers. Ladies and gentlemen, we got them. Infiltrate, the vet's invis talent, has received some great buffs as well. The cooldown has now reduced from 60 seconds to 45 seconds, and it now lasts for an additional 2 seconds up to 8 seconds from 6 seconds. As mentioned earlier, Demon Host can still track you through your invis as well. Voice of Command has also been improved. The cooldown has reduced from 45 seconds to 30 seconds, and the stagger from the ability will now work on monsters and mutants. The supporting talent, Duty and Honor, which provides teammates with bonus toughness, has also been buffed, increasing it from 50 to 100 and lasting from 10 seconds to 15 seconds. A pretty respectable team support node now. The Revive talent, Only in Death does Duty End, has had its cooldown penalty increased from 33% to 50%. This is to reflect the change in the base ability's cooldown reduction. It still ends up being the same 15 seconds extra by taking this ability node. Finally, for Ogryns, your big friendly rock has gotten buffed. Its cooldown between getting a new rock has dropped from 60 seconds to 45 seconds. It has also received an increase to maniac damage, so hopefully this will allow you to one-shot flamers in the body on damnation. They've also increased the stagger against monsters. Throwing it to their face should stagger them now. The frag bomb has also gotten a buff, mostly increasing its close range damage against carapace and unyielding armor types. Light 'em Up, which is Point Blank Barrage's augment node, has had its burn stacks reduced from 3 to 2. This is an expected balance change given how strong the ability was. Batter, which allows you to apply bleed stacks on heavy attack, has also received a balance pass, reducing its bleed stacks from 6 down to 4. Not as powerful as it was, but much more reasonable given how easy it was to apply. Pained Outburst has had its 100% toughness restoration bug fixed. It now should restore the expected 25% toughness instead. All of these changes come alongside buffs to enemies as well. In short, the base health of enemies in all difficulties has been increased with an emphasis on the bigger elites to make them more durable and for the combat director to not spawn as many. Key changes for enemies include gunner shots have had their push force reduced by 70%, making it so it's not so oppressive when you're under fire. They've also made it so that bombers will only drop a grenade once the pin pull sound effect is played. In terms of enemy spawning, they've made it so that the combat director is more aggressive with its speedrunning prevention spawning. All of you people who rush ahead, beware. The combat director will be out to get you more than before. After this comes a gigantic wall of weapon and blessing balance changes, but since there's far too many to go through and it is 2:30 in the morning as of this recording, I'll go through some which stood out to me. First off, bleed is getting nerfed a little. With patch 13, its base damage was 200, and now with patch 14, it's expected to be 175. Dueling swords got a buff to its cleave values and power on heavy attacks, and they were also made to be more fluid in weaving in its weapon special. The kickback got a big buff to bring it up to standard with the changes made so far. It now does a good deal more damage than it did, has a tighter spread, and an increased minimum pellet hit count, making its damage more consistent on most enemies in the game. Thor swords got a little bit of a buff to its light and heavy damage, and a bit more cleave to boot. However, they also lost its unique characteristic of infinite dodges. Now they have 5 dodges, the same as a combat knife. Infantry autoguns got an increase to its magazine size and reserves, finally. This is what I've always wanted for it to make it feel decent to use and not feel so starved of ammo throughout a mission. They've also fixed its faulty recoil so that crouching doesn't screw up your aim as well. The Crusher, this is the Zealot's power maul for those of you who forgot that this weapon existed, has also received some buffs. They want to make it more of a fast CC headshotting focused weapon and have buffed it as such. The Headhunter 7, which is the single-shot Headhunter rifle, has been changed to feel more like a sniper now. It has reduced magazine size, reduced ammo reserves, and a reduced fire rate, but it has received a substantial 50% damage increase to its base damage. The Stealth Sniper build is looking even better than before. The Vet Shovel has received some damage buffs and has been made so chaining in between attacks is smoother. The Combat Blade has received probably the most startling of buffs. It now has an innate 25% backstab damage bonus to its heavy attacks. The Void Strike Staff had its secondary attack damage, that's its charge attacks, reined in a little. This is expected given how powerful the staff is right now. The Plasma Gun has received some much needed buffs to its performance to keep up with the changes to the game right now, receiving increased power, cleave and finesse damage. The Revolver got a damage buff, both to its base damage by 20% and its finesse multiplier by 50%. This thing is already hitting pretty hard, and now it's going to hit even harder. All human shotguns have also received a buff to their total ammo, base damage and armor multipliers, making them last much longer in combat and allows you to be a bit more aggressive and effective in using them to clear out enemies. This is as far as I'm going to go. There's just too many detailed changes for each weapon and blessing to go through. If you want to sit down and really go through everything one by one, I'll link them in the description for you to do so at your own leisure. Remember, these are provisional changes. Not everything I've covered is guaranteed to happen. But that being said, I'm glad to be seeing so many balance changes happening so quickly after patch 13 drop. I'm sure most of us had some sort of expectation that we won't be seeing much changes until much further down the line, maybe closer to November. The existence of these changes means that my content calendar has also been decided in a way, but you'll have to wait and see what unfolds then. Right, it's getting late for me now, and by the time you see these notes live on YouTube, I'm probably going to be a husk of a human being seeing as I have to work tomorrow morning. In any case, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Varlets.